Testing, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to the Ninja Robot Studio LLC stream, where I play video games and VR experiences and talk through them from a UX designer's perspective. And game development has a heavy indirect influence on VR development and XR development, so it makes sense that we would study game design to help us to better understand how to create quality immersive experiences. And this is a stream that I put on every week. Think of it kind of as a free and less expensive university labs class. There are already classes out there that teach you about the basics of foundations of UX in general, and there are more and more classes coming out around UX for XR. That this is kind of supplementary to that, to learn a little more about the actual game side of things, to learn those patterns so that we can take that as inspiration for our XR experiences. So this is experimental and we'll be adjusting and iterating as I go and as you participate in the chat. And that's another thing, is that I want you to participate in the chat on these exercises, because it is an academic exercise that will, and it is actually a true work exercise that will give you experience in this space. It give you experience analyzing games, doing competitive analysis, which is something that UX designers do before they start a project. If they have time, they will. I make the time when I do it. I'm always doing competitive analysis, and so that I can understand how other people have solved a problem, so I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm getting inspiration, and I'm seeing what works, what doesn't work from those examples, so I can learn from them and create something better. And so this is that exercise, and we use critical thinking in our analysis here. Every episode, or every week, we go through, remind ourselves of the pillars of gaming UX. We use Celia Hodent's book, The Gamer's Brain, as our resource, and we go through, I highly recommend the book. We go through what are the pillars of gaming UX, so that we can remind ourselves what to think about while we're playing whatever game we're playing. And then at the end of the stream, we will do a rose thorn bud exercise, which is a critical thinking exercise where we look at what worked, what went well, what's the highlight, what didn't go well, what was the low point, what did we not like, what could have been done better, and then the buds are what could we do differently next time. What questions do we have? Is there any follow-up questions to investigate? Did any bugs come up? Do we need those to be reported? What are our definitive next steps? And we'll go over that exercise. And then if it is not an XR game, we will look at how would that translate into XR? Should it be translated into XR? What would the value be of doing that? And then if so, what do we need to think about from best practices perspective? And if it's already an XR game, we'll just talk through, well, what are the best practices that we need to be thinking about that they didn't, or that they did well. So we're still talking about it, just not as much as if it were not an XR game. And didn't have any questions or anything or follow up from last time, because we just finished we do genres. So we just finished our genre on platformers last week. I did some follow-up research from that. You can feel free to go back and watch that playlist. I set them up on my YouTube video on demand in a playlist that you can check out. I will add that to the chat, and it will be in the show notes as well on the About section under the Twitch page. And so you can watch that full playlist on demand later. And now we're starting a new genre of training simulators, starting with the one that we're doing today, which is Rover Mechanic Simulator. And I have not played this one. I am full transparency. I have not played this, so we have no idea how this is going to go today. Am I gonna... Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully there aren't any crashes or like I only opened it to check and make sure that it actually worked and that I could stream it. That's all I've done with this one. I kind of like to play them ahead of time to make sure that everything's going to work, but I didn't because of other stuff going on. But so we'll see what happens. I have no idea what's going to happen this time. And since we are doing training simulations, we are going to, instead of just going over the pillars of gaming UX, we're also going to go through the best practices for training in XR that I've written, and you can find on my UX for XR toolkit. That is my website in the chat, and it will be in the show notes as well. And it's on the About page on the Twitch, so you can find it. UX for Best Practices for Training in XR. I wrote these based on my own research with humans that I did when I was creating training simulations for a Fortune 10 company, and I conducted a lot of research and development, working with developers to develop and test different things to see what works, what doesn't work with humans. And so these best practices are my learnings that I've come up with over the years from that actual experience with researching humans and actual experience doing this, what I'm doing every week with you. I'm coming up with more stuff all the time. So you're seeing that in action by watching. And if you participate live in the chat, then you can also gain actual experience participating on a team of working together to learn, study, research, and that's going to only help you in your career to have that actual experience. Because that's what everyone wants, even for new hires, is experience, which is kind of impossible. I don't know how they expect you to have experience if as a junior just out of college when no one's giving you a chance. So that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this, is to help you get some of that practical experience, because it's kind of ridiculous and unfair that companies expect you to come in knowing everything when you're a junior. And then there's so many juniors that I see out there trying to get into the space, trying to get a job that can't, because nobody will hire them because they don't have experience. So that's one of my goals, is to help you get experience so that you can put that on your resume and say, hey, I worked on this side project with so-and-so, and this is what we worked on. Here's what I did. Be sure to contribute and all that you have worked with someone else, and don't take credit for things that you haven't done yourself. But you can say, hey, we worked on a team, and this is what my part was in it, and this is the experience I got from it, and that is only going to help you in your career. And so now let's quickly go over some of the pillars of gaming UX before we remind ourselves of, before we go into it, we like to remind ourselves of the pillars of gaming UX so that we have those on our minds when we're going through our sims. So this is from the Gamer's Brain by Celia Hodent. She has been in gaming UX for a number of years. Not sure exactly how long, but she has worked for some big name gaming companies. And So I highly recommend this book. It's called The Gamer's Brain. It is in the About section on the Twitch page, and I'll include it in the show notes on YouTube as well. Highly recommended. But she talks about the pillars of gaming UX. So you can see that these usability pillars are, if you're from a UX background, you can see, yes, these pillars are the known pillars from standard UX heuristics that you come with your Nielsen Norman heuristics, where those are 10. She has reduced those to 7 specifically for gaming, because there are some that weren't relevant specifically to games for the normal heuristics. And then she added 3. So there's still 10, but she added 3 that are specific to games around engageability. And so that's what we're seeing here. So signs and feedback, these over here are the normal ones that you recognize if you're from a UX background or a project background. Signs and feedback, and those are all of the visual and audio cues and haptic cues that inform you of something that can be done or whether or not you have done that thing successfully. And clarity is, how clear is it? How clear are those signs and feedback? How clear are the signs, the typography, the color contrast? How clear is everything in the UI and into the experience to make sure that you can understand and know what's going to happen? You should be able to quickly prioritize the information and quickly see what's currently relevant and what's not relevant. And that requires some prioritization of information. When should it be available? When should it not be available, to help clear up that clutter? Your UI should be clear and not intrusive. Should not get in the way of the game that you're trying to play. That's around clarity. And then form follows function is all of the design, the characters, the icons, those should convey the function. And the function should work. Function is more important than what it looks like. So you want to design for affordance. So think about a chair. A chair needs to allow you to sit in it, and a chair should look like you can sit in it when you look at it. So that is affordant. That is form follows function, because the function of the chair is to be able to sit in it. If you design it in such a way that it cannot be sat in, it is no longer a chair. It is an art piece. The form follows function, and it should look like you can sit on it if it's an actual chair. So that is, the design should convey what you can do with it, what's going to happen when you interact with it. And you should just intuitively know how to use it. And consistency is like all of the signs, the feedback, the controls, the interface, the like NPCs, non-player characters versus enemies. All of those should have some kind of consistency in design. Like non-player character friendlies should have a certain look, and depending on, of course, the game, because sometimes there may be a game that where you never know who's your friend, who's your enemy. Okay, so that's when we don't want that to get in the way. So we need to know the rules so we know when to break the rules, right? So all of your non-friendly non-player characters should have a certain look. All of your enemies should have a look to clearly define them. Like assuming it's not that case that I said where, okay, maybe this game, the purpose is to not know who your friend or who your enemy is, then you would have a different look for that. That would be a consistent pattern as well, because then you want to be consistent in how all of them look so that you can't tell who's your friend, who's your enemy. And menu, navigation, world rules, all of those things should have some kind of consistency around them. And that includes the mental models for the games. So, for example, we were playing tabletop RPGs for our first genre, and all of the cards had a certain mental model because they all had like your attack power, your shield power, or whatever you want to call it, what your defense, what is the stat on this card. So there's a stat block on the card, and they all have a consistent stat block, pretty consistent across all the games, because that is a mental model that people playing tabletop RPGs have come to understand. And so designing towards that mental model makes it easier for them to pick up the mechanics and worry about actual play of the game. And so we want to follow those mental models for whatever genre we're doing, and also for regions. So right now we're looking at training simulators, so there's going to be some patterns and mental models that come out of that. And we want to follow regional gaming mental models and for different controls. So, for example, we're playing on a PC right now, but if we were playing on a Quest, there are certain mental models that come with players from Quests on how to use controllers and what the different buttons do. And same with PlayStation. If you have a PlayStation controller, which is what I have, then there are certain mental models that you have about that controller. And those mental models change per region. So, for example, in Asia, in Japan specifically, I don't know about the other countries in Asia, but Japan specifically, the 0 and the X are reversed, so the meanings are reversed, and so you use them reversed than you would in America. In America, the circle is the back button. In Japan, the X is the back button, so they're backwards. So you have to switch if you're playing a game that's from a different region. You have to remember to switch which button you're using, which adds cognitive load, which is the next thing that we're talking about here, minimum workload. So a player's cognitive load, the physical load, are the two types of load we're talking about here, workload. And we want to take those things into account and minimize them as long as they're not part of the game mechanic, of course. So like I was saying, that the X and the circle are not a game mechanic. They're a control. They are a way of interacting with the game. So those things should not get in the way of the actual interaction of the game. So you want to take into account those regional models and design accordingly for them. And that's very important if you're designing a game for international use, or that's going to be available internationally, even if it wasn't originally meant for that. You want to design for scale. And you want to take into account that, and the interactions should not be cumbersome or overly complicated. Like if you have a common action, and assuming you have a game HUD where your one action is in the bottom right and the next action that the player always completes is in the top left, that is too much workload and it's unnecessary. Why are they separate? Why not just put them together down at the bottom right or wherever? This is what we're talking about, workload. How long does it take? How cumbersome is it to complete the interaction? Is that a part of the game mechanic, or is it just because no reason other than you didn't think through the interaction and how complicated it would be? So you don't want to have it overly cumbersome unless, of course, it's part of the challenge. And one of the challenges that I like to mention is, like, if you're in a boss fight and the boss puts some kind of condition on you, such as confuse, or then usually, like when you play a game and you use a controller and you use your joysticks on the controller to move forward or back, you would expect to move the way that you're pushing the joystick. So forward to move forward, back to move back. But if you have a confuse condition on you, that may get switched around in a random way, so that you have to fight to figure out where to get your character to go where you want them to go, because they have the confused condition put on them. That is okay. That is a game mechanic. But if you were to not have that control set normally, like when they don't have that confused condition on them and your joystick is just randomly pushing them somewhere, that's what we're talking. What is the point of that workload if it's not part of you just want to make sure that you're minimizing that workload so that it's not overly cumbersome. And the players should be able to focus on the game mechanics or the features and the content, not on how to interact with it. And that is very detrimental and very important, vital to training, especially because we're not training them on how to play the game. We're training them on the content of the game is what they're supposed to be learning, not how to interact with it. So we need to let them focus on what they're supposed to be learning. And then error prevention and recovery. We should be able to anticipate what kind of errors the players are going to make, and give them a way to prevent it, and give them a way to get out of it. And as long as it's not, again, a mechanic of the game, because we don't want to give away, like, if it were, and then we'll talk about training in a second, but error prevention, for example, leaving without saving. This used to be a much bigger deal, but it is still a big deal in some of the games that you play, because the autosave is a thing now. It used to not be. Error prevention would be once you start to leave the game, are you sure you want to exit? You might lose some of your gameplay. Are you sure you want to exit? And then give them a way to save or cancel out and exit, or exit. So that is error prevention and recovery, giving them a way to recover from that without losing 2 hours of gameplay, or letting them continue, go ahead and save, continue, exit out. And then flexibility is around giving the players flexibility based on their needs. So the control mapping, the font size, the colors, accessibility, we want to give flexibility to that. Like if we want to be able to adjust font sizes for people with low vision, we want to be able to adjust the sounds for people with hearing impairments. They're going to have to adjust the volume settings on an individual level, like sound effects versus music versus voice versus whatever, are going to have to be adjusted individually for someone with a hearing impairment, because they have more difficulty differentiating sounds. So just having a single volume button for everything is going to hurt how they can hear the game if you're not able to turn down special effects and so forth to let them distinctly hear the voices over the music or whatever. So you want flexibility to be able to add different controllers and to use those controllers intuitively. Like on the PC, there are multiple controllers that you can hook up to a PC. You can hook up switches for people with motor function impairments. You can hook up an Xbox controller. I've got a PlayStation controller on my PC. But all of the games that I play default to an Xbox controller tooltips, so then I have to mentally convert all of those tooltips into the PlayStation controller, which is harder for me because I don't have an Xbox controller and I don't know the button layout of the Xbox controller. So you take those things into account and design for them so that people have flexibility over on what they can do to make the game enjoyable for them, within reason, of course. But languages, audio levels, difficulty levels is another thing. Some people like to play do or die, and some people just want to enjoy the game and relax and chill and enjoy the story. So if your game is such that it is possible to do that, then try to do that. Again, not all games. It doesn't make sense for all games to have different difficulty levels, but there are many that can have that and it still be enjoyable to a large number of people. So add that flexibility. And then on the new pillars over here that weren't part of the original heuristics are these that are specifically for gaming: engageability, motivation, emotion, and game flow. So motivation is aiming to satisfy the player's need for competence, autonomy, relatedness. What is their motivation for playing the game? What is their motivation for continuing to play the game? Are they getting rewards? What are those rewards? Are they meaningful in the moment, in context? Like, why are you, like if you're playing a game that is kind of an open world game, but they keep gathering things, but they can't do anything with the stuff that they gathered until level 10. If you're rewarding them with, if you're rewarding things that are crafting materials and they can't craft until level 10, how is that meaningful to them right now? The meaningful thing to them would be trying to survive. If it's a open world game, healing potions and money to buy gear or actual gear would be more meaningful to them than crafting materials, if they can't even use the crafting materials yet. So think about the value of the thing that you're rewarding with them, and is it going to be meaningful to them at that point? And emotion is the polish of the game feel. The cameras, the lighting, the control, the characters, the presence. What is that physical reality in that game? That's the emotion that is portraying the game feel. The Game flow is the accounting of the level of the challenge, the difficulty curve, and the pacing of the increase of the difficulty curve, so that it doesn't get boring and it continues to stay interesting as the play progresses. What is that flow? And so those are the pillars of good gaming UX. And now let's quickly talk about the training. The best practices for training, since that's what we're doing today. So these are, again, based on my own experience, designing and conducting the research and the usability tests with target audiences on actual training simulations. And so these best practices work regardless of what your subject matter is for your training simulation. And there are more best practices than this. This is just a high level of best practices. Instructional designers would be really good to help you really lock down your best practices for it. These were mine based on my research. And regardless of the subject matter, or whether your audience is an XR novice or expert, a lot of your audience, a lot more audience than you think, is going to be a novice, at least for now, until it becomes ubiquitous. These best practices will help all of you to create more effective experiences. And you need to know your target audience. So this is for any project that you're creating. You need to know your target audience. So it's important that to remember that we're not our target audience. We're more heavily experienced in XR, those of us who are creating these experiences, whereas the people in the target groups are most likely not going to be power users, and they are by majority new to XR. This is still the case, even though it is becoming more and more commonplace. It is still the case that XR is new to the majority of people, and it will be for a little while, until Apple and Google get their devices out and it starts becoming ubiquitous at that point. Or whatever new player in the market is going to come out with something besides Apple and Google. It's about time that happened. It's been a while. The interaction elements that we take for granted as people on the team, as people who are more experienced with XR, and if you are creating an XR experience, you are going to quickly become more experienced in XR. Things that we take for granted are going to be harder for people that are new to it and for most of our target audience. So unlike us, they're going to be dealing with a high level of information overload when they get into your simulation. And so there's this awe factor, first of all, that people, that takes up a lot of a person's focus whenever they go into a sim. Think about yourself if you've ever been in an XR, a VR simulation. If you haven't, get in one. That's the whole point. You cannot design effective solutions if you have never been in an XR headset. Get in one and understand for yourself what's going on here. And in addition to the awe factor, they're also expected to digest some kind of information that they're supposed to be learning. And so this is a lot of information to take into account. So as such, we need to make sure that they are able to have control over that and to be able to progress at their own pace, and so that they can learn and understand what it is that they're supposed to be learning. That's the whole point, is to teach them. So we need to enable them to do that, to learn. And they need to have the time to digest that. So we need to leave that control in their hands. And that is the goal of the experience, is to teach them something. And now there are multiple goals of that. You could be teaching them something, or you could be teaching them competency. You could be bringing awareness to them. You could be testing competency. You could be training someone in a new skill. There are multiple goals here. What are the goals of yours? You need to know that before you start designing it. Before you start designing it, you need to know those goals. And that is fine to have multiple goals. You could be doing multiple things, but the sooner you know them, the better you'll be able to help the people reach the objectives of the experience without a lot of expensive rework later, and that I have seen myself on projects where I came in after all the design had been done, after no research had been done, no user research had been done. All of the design had been done by developers with no UX input whatsoever, no UX involvement, and the training simulations had multiple goals all mixed together that were incoherent at that point. It was like, what am I supposed to be learning right now? Am I supposed to be learning? It was not. It was all muddled together. You need to understand the goals so that you can clearly create this with your guidance, with your instruction, to make sure that they know what they're supposed to be learning, so that they can remember it, and they can feel confident that they are gaining competency in this thing. And it costs a lot of money. I mean, even on a normal project, it costs a lot of money to redesign your project after it's been built. But in XR, multiply that, because it is a lot more time and effort put into creating an XR experience because of your modeling, your environmental design, all of that rigging and animation that goes into it. It's way more in-depth work. That voiceover work, those are things that you don't deal with on normal 2D applications, but these are things that you deal with in XR. And having to do rework later usually ends up being no rework. It usually ends up, we just have to live with these things because we don't have the money or the time to fix it now. So that's another reason to have UX involved from the beginning, is to help you define what is our goal, how do we accomplish that goal, how do we make it clear for our users, our target audience, our students, whatever you want to call them at this point. How do we make that clear for them so that we understand and we can build the right thing the first time without having to spend a ton of money reworking it later, or just being stuck with what we've got and then having a poor return on investment because we didn't involve UX up front. And then guidance and instruction is very, very important. It's important to any sim, to any experience, especially in XR, to give them some kind of tutorial in the beginning. Especially right now while it's not ubiquitous. It's very important. And this is another thing that people take for granted, that I've had experience. People taking for granted this, how much detail goes into this guidance and instruction. Because people think, do they really need that much hand-holding? Because it doesn't seem like they need that much hand-holding. Actually, they do. They do need that much hand-holding because they're new to it. We're not. We think it's hand-holding. It's not hand-holding. It's making it clear for them. So that's another reason we need to remind ourselves we're not the target audience. Yes, it might be annoying to someone who is very experienced in this, but it's not going to be. What's going to be annoying for someone who's new to it is that they don't know how to use the thing, and that they can't even focus on learning what they're supposed to be learning because they don't know how to use the thing at all. So guidance and instruction is very important to the sim. And so when you're providing your guidance and instruction for the content that's covered, it's important to make sure that the trainees, the students, whatever you want to call them, know the goals and understand how to accomplish those goals within that virtual environment. You want to give them clear calls to action throughout the experience, but especially when you're teaching them how to use the controllers and how to interact with the objects in the world. And that would require some kind of onboarding, like an onboarding tutorial, not just a picture of what the controllers do, because that's another common thing people do. Here's a diagram of the controllers and what they do. Now, remember that. Good luck. Have fun. That's not a good onboarding experience. You need to actually teach them how to use them. And there are some great and delightful experiences that you can create to teach them how to do these things. And you want to give them clear goals to focus on and complete. And then you want to restrict their choices to explore. Restricting their choices to explore the world, because they're going to want to explore the world. Restricting that and not letting them do that while they're trying to learn something is going to help them focus, and it's going to reduce their distraction. So you got to restrict their choices while they're learning and give them control over when to move to the next task. Give them control over the progress, because they're the ones that have to process the information, and give them clear wayfinding to the next task or goal. And a very, very good, if you have a Quest or any access to Oculus applications through the Rift or whatever, First steps is going to be an excellent example for you to try. First steps and first contact are excellent ones to try. I would say of the two, first steps is going to be the most educational for training. So try that one. And you want to make sure that for your tutorials and your training that you're moving them in a linear path. You want to give them a clear goal, let them complete that goal successfully, let them know whether or not let them complete it, and then on successful and completed, give them the options to try it again or go to the next goal. You want to give them the option to practice, because once is not going to really solidify knowledge. And then for competency, you want to, again, give them clear objectives and then offer ways of memory cues on the controllers without giving away the answers. So you have to figure out that balance of how do I teach them, how do I remind them how to interact with stuff without giving away the answers, and let them have some kind of assessment review of success or failure. And then again, give them options to try again or proceed to the next objective if there's one. And you want to be sure that the behavioral patterns of the interactions, again, this is about consistency. We just talked about that. Behavioral patterns, the way a person indicates they've completed a portion of a competency assessment should be consistent throughout. If there's a change in that pattern, you would need to make it clear and make sure that there's a good reason for it. And there's a train coming. I'm sure it's about to honk right behind my house. Yep. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. Interface. There are some standard best practices on interfaces. Those still come over to training. They still come over to XR. All of those standard best practices still translate to XR, only they're going to be a little bit different because you've got different target sizes to deal with, different input methods to deal with. So they're going to, there are some best practices that are going to be different, but all of those design standards, like UI designs and stuff, are basically the same. You've got to have always accompany labels with symbols with labels and so forth. And when you're dealing with a training simulation, you absolutely want to include a label with your symbols, because this is not a puzzle game unless you're testing competency. This is a training sim, so they need to understand what it is you're teaching them. You need to make sure without a doubt they're understanding what you're teaching them. And then there is a ton more here that we don't have time to go through, but this is a very good overview of best practices for training. So now let's talk about the game that we're going to be playing today. It is Rover Mechanic Simulator, and we're playing the Steam version on the desktop. This is a sandbox experience that teaches you how to repair and maintain Mars rovers. And this is, I'm doing the demo version. I'm doing the free demo version. So I don't know how far it will take us into the training, but it is the free version. The paid version is only $11.99 US. But we're doing the free version. And this one is, so yeah, I don't know how far we're going to get, but it does teach us how to maintain Mars rovers. So let's get started on them. Let me adjust all my stuff. Okay. I think I've got everything good here. All right. So this is set up as a kind of a tablet, I guess. And it's interesting that they have the fingerprint. I wonder if you're holding, I wonder if you're wearing gloves or not, because if you are, then fingerprint might be a little hard to read with a glove on. Something to think about in your designs. So let's see what kind of options they have here. General options, language, so we can choose a few languages, and yes, they have them in the actual language that they speak, which is excellent. One of the things that is often a problem is that Polski will say Polish in English if you're set on English, or French, or Chinese, instead of being in the language that it's in, so that which makes it harder for people to find their native language. Another thing, though, is that they're gonna have to, if they don't speak this as a first language, they're gonna have to dig through this to figure out what's what. So this would be a good reason why you would want to accompany your label with a symbol to help with people's second language find the language setting so that they can change it. Controls. So this is it. And I'm wondering if this, I don't think this one supports a game control. I think it's only keyboard. I'm not as good with the keyboard. My hands are small. It's much more comfortable to use a game controller. Another thing to think about that is when we're talking about flexibility, are there options in here? How would we be able to connect other types of controls like switches or whatever? If someone with a motor function impairment wanted to play this, would they be able to? See, there aren't any options for color blindness adjustment. So I don't have any kind of tool on the PC to test for color contrast the way that I can on my Mac. On my Mac, it's wonderful because I can just turn on this app that you can put up a window and see whatever's on your screen. But with the PC, so far, you have to take screenshots and upload them to some website, and it's way more steps than is necessary, especially when I come from a Mac and can just open up a window that simulates it. I wish there was something like that for the PC that actually worked. I did find one that wasn't that great. It was a terrible interface, terrible design, so I couldn't even get it to work the way I needed it to, and so I uninstalled it. I don't even remember the name of it, but yeah. So yeah, can't test for that. Video, there's a lot of options for video, depth of field, motion blur. So this is kind of for sickness, so you can adjust your settings for motion sickness a little bit with your motion blur, and that's also for like PC processing too. Yeah, so there are a little bit. So audio, we want to be, like I said earlier, we want to be able to adjust these different sounds because especially if there's a voice, we want to be able to turn down some of these other sounds so that people with hearing impairments can clearly distinguish the voice from the rest of the sound. And I have sensitive hearing, so everything is incredibly loud to me, including the music that's playing right now in the background from Lo-Fi Girl. It's incredibly loud to me, even though I've got it turned way down. So I have sensitive hearing, which is another thing that people have besides hearing impairments, is their hearing is too sensitive, so we have to also adjust volumes to be able to distinguish noise because hearing's too sensitive. And it all gets jumbled together. So, okay. And then I don't have any stats. I haven't done anything, and I probably, since it's the free one, I'm not gonna get any anyway. Okay, credits. And exit. I'm not sure if that's exiting the game or the menu. I'm not sure. That's why we want to have clear information architecture and clear words to make sure, are we closing the menu or exiting the game? If you're exiting the game, say exit game. If you're closing the menu, say close menu. It's really simple. Doesn't have to be hard. But they seem to be wanting to limit their words to one word, which If you're designing this for multiple languages, that's not going to work anyway. So just make it clear. Okay, so this is, I'm controlling the camera with my mouse. I'm sensitive to motion, so the mouse feels like it's too sensitive to me. I don't know how to get back to the menu. I'm clicking buttons. Can I get back to the menu? Options. I hit escape. So let's see. Mouse sensitivity. I'm going to turn on the mouse sensitivity. I already turned it down quite a bit. I'm not sure what orbiting sensitivity is, but I have to turn it down because I'm sensitive to motion. So I have to adjust that, and I appreciate that they give you the option to do that. Okay. So I already went through this first part, so I know where to go, but they should have included the tutorial. So when I started the game, so this is how, I didn't get very far, and it's good that I didn't, because you wouldn't be able to see the stuff now. What is 5? It's got a game controller as a symbol, but you're using a keyboard and mouse, so that was slightly confusing. I pushed the 5 key to open it, just thinking, oh, can I use a controller? No. They're just using the game controller as a symbol for game controls. I mean, I figured it out, but I think maybe you rethink your symbols a little bit. I mean, I figured it out. It's not like a huge deal. It's just kind of an annoyance. That's the log, and then 4 is objectives. Okay. So when I did start the game, it did say that I needed to enter the hangar, and it made it more apparent. So I'm wondering if I can completely restart. Can I completely restart? I don't think it lets me completely restart. Oh, and here are my tutorials. Okay, so tutorials. These types of tutorials where you're, let me mark this on video. These types of tutorials that are just words on a page that you have to read and you have to remember for how to interact with something. Don't do this for VR. This is not helping a new person learn how to do it. This is not an effective way of teaching someone how to do something. You need to teach them by doing. They need to learn by doing. So you teach them as they go, or you give them a tutorial module within your game. So like where you have these menu options, like in your opening menu, where you have your menu options, you would have an option for tutorial. So like they have tutorial here, but the tutorial that they have here is just words on a page that you have to read and remember later. This is not good instruction. This is not good teaching. Don't do this. Having words on the screen is fine in context through a tutorial module where you're teaching them by doing, letting them practice and learn. That's back to those best practices that we were going over earlier. Teach them, don't just tell them. And so we're learning about the mouse cursor, how to interact with the mouse cursor. I'm not going to remember any of this, so I'm not even bothering to read it. Maybe you haven't unlocked that object yet, or maybe you don't meet the requirements. So it's just telling you what the different mouse cursors mean. And then the side panels. Side panels help you keep track of your current task objectives, and you can access those through either the side panel here or through this, hitting the logs on the side of the game here. And So this is not the ideal. This is not the ideal way of teaching someone how to interact with an XR game. So it did tell me when I first came into the game to come to this to unlock the air, to open the airlock. So it did teach me that. So that's how I know to do that. That's how I know how to do that. So now come into this room and I see a bunch of little green triangle thingies. And those are I don't remember reading the tutorial last time either, but even with that, I still understood that those green dots were something for me to interact with. However, I've played games before. I play a lot of games. Would this be clear to someone who did not play games? What I was expecting, more so than little green dots, little green triangles, diamonds, whatever these things are, I was expecting glowing objects or glowing outlines on objects instead of green triangles. Because glowing outlines on objects is a much more noticeable indicator, because this green doesn't seem to be a high enough contrast for people with low vision or people with color blindness to be able to clearly differentiate, oh, that's an object of interest. It's not enough contrast. But a glowing object, a glowing outline, would be a very clear contrast of what I'm supposed to see. However, there are red outlines on various things within this environment. So even that would be a little bit more difficult to differentiate that. So you would need a clear color contrast, and the preference, my expectation when I came here, my mental model from other things was that it would be a glowing object, not a triangle, or not a diamond. I don't know why I keep saying triangle, not a diamond shape icon. So these are my objectives. Learn more about the radio, learn more about the workbench, and so forth. So radio, where is the radio? I think it's over here. So I'd have to walk around and look for the radio. That's another, so step by step. Oh, I didn't even click on anything. Step by step instruction, if you were wanting this to be more clear, would be to have that, and I can't pull it up right now because I'm in the radio info. I was trying to hit 4 to pull back up the objective, but instead of having the long list of objectives and all of the things highlighted, I would have done step by step. And maybe that's just me, and usability testing would say whether or not that was the right approach, but I would have done step by step. And the reason I would do it step by step is because in my own experience with training and doing usability testing on people doing these training simulations, step by step was less overwhelming. And it gave him a clear goal. Here's what I need to go do first. Because having too many things, too many options at once, especially when you're brand new, was too overwhelming for someone who's new to VR, new to XR. So giving that step-by-step instruction was actually a much better experience for them. Because again, it was constraining them to do one thing, let them learn about that thing, and then move to the next thing. Let them focus. And it was less overwhelming that way. And otherwise, it was just information overload. So that's my experience from my own testing. And we could expand that testing to more people and see whether or not that's true on a larger audience base. But in the audience that I had and what I was training for, which was not the same audience as someone who's going to be maintaining a Mars rover, they've different education levels. But based on my experience, focusing is beneficial. Even if it's so we need to think about it from even with an accessibility standpoint. I'm on a different topic now, but kind of the same topic. But even from an accessibility standpoint, when you design something for accessibility for people with motor function impairments, again, I'm on a different topic now. I'm on accessibility now. When you're designing for people with motor function impairments or cognitive impairments or anything like that, that's going to benefit everyone. Designing for that is going to benefit everyone, not just those with those impairments, because it makes it more clear and it gives more focus, because we think that we can multitask, but in reality, we can't multitask effectively. We're spreading ourselves too thin. So giving focus and giving constraints to keep people focused on one thing at a time is actually more effective than multitasking and giving them too many options at once. So that was a little side tangent. So click to enable the radio. So it's just a digital radio. As much as you have absolutely no use for it while repairing rovers, it's still a pretty neat device that can easily brighten your mood. Good job. You're thinking about that. Click the left mouse button to enter the radio menu. I'm clicking the left mouse button, but I guess I have to finish this because it's not letting me actually do it. So this is another thing. I have to close the panel that's teaching me how to do the thing before I can do the thing. It would be better to just let me do the thing while I'm reading the panel. Why are you disabling my ability to practice while I'm learning? I have to go by memory now. And for a radio, yeah, sure, probably fine. But when you're getting into more detailed stuff, when you're getting into more complex things, you're going to want to be able to reference the how-to. And in the real life, you would be able to reference the how-to. So why would you take that ability away in the training sim? Because they're not to a point where you're testing competency right now. You're training them, so let them reference the how-to while they're practicing. So click the left mouse button to enter the radio menu, select a station that you would wish to listen to, and then say, let your hair down a bit. So the previous mechanic that worked in this hangar dropped the radio and broke it. It seems fine, but she says it's not. Maybe you can take a glimpse into it and see what the problem is. I thought we were rover mechanics. Okay, what do I want here? I'm already playing music that you don't know about. What do I want? Let's see. I'll just start at the left. Nope. Oh, is it? Let me turn off this music and see. Oh, it is playing music. Just can't hear it. What I hope is that this isn't going to give me some kind of ping on Twitch. So we're going to not play the radio because I don't want to get pinged. How do you stop it? I don't know how to stop it. Is that how you stop it? No. That's a problem. It's broken. Ah, I can turn down the volume. I don't want to get pinged for copyright in case those are copyrighted. So we're going to go back to Lo-Fi Girl. Okay. I don't see a problem with radio, but whatever. Percussive maintenance usually works on radios and TVs. Oh, old TVs, not new ones. Okay, next objective is to learn more about the workbench. So I see multiple workbenches. Which workbench are we talking about? I could just go around the room, I guess. And I wasn't expecting that to just pop up. I was expecting to go to the table. So when you're doing a training sim in VR, in XR, I would say don't automatically pop up the thing. Let them go to the table, look around, and let them click on something to initiate the learning activity. Don't just automatically pop up the learning activity because they could be distracted by something external to the thing. You want to always give them all the control over the progress of the thing they're learning. Give them full control over it because they're the ones that have to process that information. So in XR, make sure they have the control. So use the PCB table to find out which components of printed circuit boards are damaged so you can replace them. Remember that you don't always have to 3D print specific PCB components. If you want to avoid too much work, you can also print an entire PCB, but this is of course a more expensive solution. Okay. It's not currently available, fine. I don't know why you had it highlighted then. It's just to know more about my workspace. And I didn't click anything, it just automatically popped up. Again, it was kind of annoying. I would rather initiate that myself. So with the help of this device, you can configure ECUs that, and actually like pop-ups and things in VR is going to be way more jarring because again, you got to get out of your 2D thinking and think about things in 360 space. If you were in real life and you had something suddenly fly up towards you, what would you do? It would freak you out and you would react. So don't do that in VR either. Unless, of course, it's part of the game mechanic. But this would not be a necessary part of the game mechanic to have that happen. So let them initiate it. Let them start it. Because just having things suddenly fly up to you is jarring in real life. And it is also jarring in XR. So let them control it. The Rover ECU configurator. With the help of this device, you can configure ECUs of the rovers you repair. Every time you finish the job, you have to plug the wireless configurator into the rover and use the Rover ECU configurator to reset the system. Okay, but that's not available yet. But there it is. And I wanted to click on it. Okay, the 3D printer. So what I was wanting to click on was this thing here. So you can see my mouse here. I was wanting to click on this thing, but what it brought up was this thing. So again, I had to stop and think, what is it that I'm looking at right now? Because I don't know what these things are anyway. So allowing me to have the control over which thing I'm looking at, instead of just automatically popping up something that's in my field of view, is a much better solution to just let me have control over it so that I know what I'm learning about right now and you're not pushing things at me that I'm not looking at. Because I wasn't looking at that. I wasn't looking at the printer. I was looking at this thing. What is this thing? This is what I was wanting to look at. And then I had to take a minute to figure out, we're not talking about this thing. We're talking about this thing. So just give me control over it. Use a 3D printer to print new components and parts that you need for rover maintenance. The higher the complexity of a part, the more time it takes to print it. Try to complete your orders by replacing the smallest components possible, since it's a more economical approach. Remember that printing requires resources. You can obtain more resources by completing quests. So, I mean, I'm not hating this thing because I still kind of want to learn how to do this because I'm a nerd, but some of the interactions are annoying in 2D. They would absolutely be frustrating as all get out in XR. So that's why I'm talking about them. but I can handle it in 2D slightly. It's still annoying, but I'm just, you know, I'm not hating the game. I know it kind of sounds like I am, but these are good learning things. These are very good learning things that we're doing. So the MCU, this is the thing I was wanting to look at. Main control unit. This device is the main control unit of your hangar. Use it to operate the gantry crane and play retro video games. Okay, it does look like a video game console. Retro video games, if you have any. The MCU's OS is a Martian distribution of Linux. Oh, sudo doesn't work on Mars. Okay. Sudo is so if you're a Linux nerd, sudo is a command from Linux. Yeah. Okay. Now this thingy. The crusher. That doesn't sound good. With the help of the crusher, you can recycle bad parts and recover some of the resources. The more a part is damaged, the fewer resources can be recovered from it. Okay. So I am still learning something. I'm not saying this is horrible. Okay, see, now I walk up to this thing and the triangle doesn't... Oh, now it did. Okay. Is it because my mouse was over it? Was that an accidental thing? I didn't click on anything. It didn't behave the way everything else did, so I wasn't expected. So, consistency in behaviors. Make sure it's consistent. And if you just give me control over it, then it's consistent. Problem solved. The workbench. Use the workbench to find out which components of sets are damaged so you can easily replace them. At this workbench, you can also clean the dirty parts. Remember that you can't analyze and repair parts that are dirty. Keep in mind that you don't always have 3D print specific set components. If you want to avoid too much work, you can also print an entire set, but this, of course, is a more expensive solution. That was what they said back at the other thing that I forgot what was called. Okay. So why is it glowing? Is there something? Okay, have I learned everything? What's my next objective? Start a new quest. I clicked on tablet because it was down in the bottom left. Welcome to the order selector view. Here you can find all orders our colony receives. The orders come from various companies, which means your rewards and objectives might differ depending on a company you choose to provide your service to. As usually in the world of engineering, some orders are complex and there are ones that are even more complex. Minimum rank requirement sorts the complexity level of orders accordingly to your experience. Thanks to that, you never start an order you can't complete. That's good. So A or D to switch messages. Once you have selected a task, all the important information you need is displayed on the right side of the screen. Again, we're having to remember out of context what's going on. Just show it in context. Once you've selected a task, all the important information you need is displayed on the right of the screen. Each order has a small note that informs you what the problem might be, but keep in mind that this is just loose insight from the ordering company. In addition, there's also information how many resources you can get for completing the order you've selected. Our engineers always do preliminary analysis of the order, so sometimes they might leave a clue of what needs to be replaced. Sojourner. So, model name Sojourner. Low price. This is going to be easy. Everything seems to be fine except one wheel. Would you be so nice and find out what causes the problem? So, the wheel. Preliminary analysis is the wheel. What type of service would you like to provide? Premium service is unavailable. So, I can only do standard. So, am I Just clicking this to hold it. Okay, so this tab is the central point of the game. Here you can find all information about your task. The rewards box contains information about resources and experience, which you can get for completing a task. The summary box contains information about how much money you've spent. Except for the tutorial missions, you can finish orders without repairing the rovers. The only rule is that they can't be lacking any parts. However, we don't recommend this method as it might backfire and you'll have to bear the consequences. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty crappy thing. Finish the order without repairing it. Let's talk about the tabs on the right. What right? What right? These right? Okay. This right. You'll see all of the parts that you detach from the rover that is currently being repaired. And I can't click on it to look at any of them because, again, we can't while the tutorial thing's up. For whatever reason, in XR you would want them to have like a reference panel of this information and still have the panel that they're working on so that they can reference and learn. That's the better way of doing it. To let them look and reference. How do we learn in real life? We have a reference to the side and we can focus on the thing we're learning so that we can learn by doing as we read instructions. This is the better way of teaching. So this is keeping me from being able to do that because of the design. Whenever this side panel is up, I can't interact with anything on this screen. Yeah, it's kind of keeping me focused, but it's also keeping me from being able to look through and learn about the thing that it's talking about. Because now I have to remember everything it said instead of learning while I'm doing. So you can see all of the parts that you detach from the rover that is currently being repaired. And remember that you can't finish the task before you attach all the missing parts back. And I actually have an example, a sketch. So give me a second and I'll bring it up. It's in that article. Here. Right here. So see how they have the thing that they're working on. This is the panel that they're working on. Can you see my mouse? Yeah, now you can. This is the panel that they're actually interacting with. And this is the reference. So this is a completely different example. It's a scoreboard, but the reference is up here. Up to the side, and the thing that they're working on is here. Where they're focusing in their ergonomic range. So this is it's kind of a really loose comparison to what I'm talking about here, but kind of the same thing. You have a reference to the side and your interaction is separate so that you can focus on whatever it is you're interacting with. And again, a loose translation of what I'm talking about, but kind of the same thing. I wouldn't make those sizes the same for this context. I would change sizes and stuff. But in the missing parts tab, you'll see all the parts. Tasks are here. Where's tasks? What? Tasks? Is that behind the screen so I can't see it? Or is that objectives? Oh, okay. They changed the word. So this tab does not say tasks, it says objectives. But they didn't update the tutorial to say objectives. It's important whenever you are designing any game, regardless of whether it's in XR or in 2D, is to make sure that you are keeping track of your information architecture. That's another thing I mentioned in the best practices for training in XR. I mentioned it a lot in there. Information architecture is very important. It's important in any game, but it's incredibly important when you're trying to teach somebody something. Because this is now, I had to stop and think here and figure it out. It's like, tasks is not even an option here. This says objectives, so fix it. Update the word. Keep track of your information architecture and make sure that you update the stuff. So here you can find all information regarding your current tasks. And preliminary analysis. This is the same tab that you've already seen in the quest selector view. And that doesn't remind me what actually happens in that tab. You're expecting me to remember that. I don't remember what was in that tab. So just let me click on it. Let me see what's going on in these different tasks instead of just telling me about them and not letting me interact with it. I need to remember that. That's a Thorn. And I haven't had enough coffee today, so I don't know what all I'm going to remember when we get to the Thorn section. So I'm going to write it down. So what you would do in real life if you were analyzing something is you would take notes as you go. And so I'm not doing that, but that's what you would do in real life. If this were a real project, you would be taking down notes as you go of issues and good. You want to note the good things and you want to note the issues. And you would do it as you go, but I haven't been doing that as I go. So one of the things was can't practice while doing. While learning, doing. Not the right word. While learning. And the other thing was information architecture tasks versus objectives. So, not updated. And then, assuming I remember something, instead of just showing it to me again. What's in preliminary analysis tab? I don't remember what's in the preliminary analysis tab. Again, I'm new to this. Why would I remember? Because I'm learning a lot and I'm not able to practice it while I learn. So, a lot of information going on here. I am still learning, okay? I am learning, but it's not as effective learning. So you want to make sure that it's effective as possible to get the best return on investment of your training. So assuming I remember what's in preliminary analysis and just saying same thing, and instead of reminding. It's okay to remind people of stuff, especially when they're new to something. Please remind them, because it's a lot of stuff to take in, and we have this unrealistic expectation of saying something once to someone and they'll remember everything we said. Is that how you remember things? No. Unless that's not normal. You're special if you can do that. That's not normal. So don't expect everyone else to be able to do that, because they can't. Especially when they're getting a lot taken in at the same time. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of saying, well, I told you that, but yeah, I'm guilty of it too. But it's an unrealistic expectation. So instead of just reminding, okay, I'm making notes and talking at the same time. Okay. Oh yeah, and it was odd. It was not letting me select initiate. Pop-ups auto popping up stuff. Not good in XR. Okay, now, so I did that. Now I can look at it. So place the lift in the right place. Preliminary analysis is the wheel. Okay, now I see what was in it. Okay. Place the rover on the lift, repair the rover, restart the drivers. Okay, so this is a nice objective list, okay? First thing, okay, there's one problem with it. Okay, I would say do checkboxes instead of diamonds. So that was another thing. Diamonds, not enough contrast. Not enough contrast on against background in the workshop. And then also red and green in the checklist, just make it a checklist. Because that doesn't depend on color. And again, color blindness is a lot more common than you think. Red-green color blindness is one of the most common types of color blindness. So when we use red and green as when we use a color as our primary indicator of some kind of information, we're making it difficult on a large number of people who there are people out there who don't know they have color blindness because they didn't go to the eye doctor because they can see fine. And why? According to them, they can see fine. So they don't know they have color blindness until they're older. But then they're having problems differentiating information that is clear to other people, but they don't know why. And even if they do know why, they know that they're having trouble. Doesn't matter if they know. The thing is, don't use color as your primary information indicator, as your sole source of information, because color blindness is a real thing. It is a very common thing. Red-green color blindness is the most common thing amongst all of them, I believe. So using color only as your indicator of whether or not, in this case, something is done or not done is not going to help a large number of people. So the clear thing to do, this is a checklist. Just use checkboxes. We already understand this. Just use a checkbox. Is the checkbox filled? Is the checkbox not filled? This lets me clearly know that I've done this thing. Or I've not done this thing. Much simpler, and it helps. And it doesn't matter what color, how your eyes work. As long as you can see, of course. You're going to be able to tell that it is the right thing. And there's a whole different level of accessibility stuff to talk about for those who can't see, because those people want to play games too. They're like everyone else, and they want to be able to, and I'm thinking of myself too, is my eyesight is getting worse and worse every year, even less than every year. It's getting worse and worse. Right now, I'm having trouble seeing, and knowing that in the future, I'm a heavy gamer, and in the future, I'm going to still want to play games. That's not going to change. I still want to be able to play games. Will I be able to? That depends on whether or not they're designed for me to be able to. Just because someone can't see, and I'm getting off on a tangent again, just because someone can't see doesn't mean they don't want to do the same things that you do. They don't want to live the same life you do. So remember that when you're designing your stuff. Don't forget about them. Anyway, so don't use color as your primary information. Just use a checkbox. Okay, now what am I supposed to do? Do I hit escape? What's under info? That's my info. Okay. Warehouse and analysis. Welcome to the warehouse. It's your inventory. Click on the parts you want to see more information about. Why not just say inventory? But okay, each part has a name, production price, type, etc. If by any chance you detached an unanalyzed part, you can still analyze it in the warehouse by simply selecting the part and pressing F on your keyboard. I don't know that I will remember that. Professions. You can improve your mechanic skills here. We prepared 3 paths for you. If you like DIY and the most important thing for you is to remove Rover parts as fast as possible, you should focus on the technician tree. If you don't like to get your hands dirty, but you're quite good in counting money, maybe the economist tree is for you. And the last tree, analyst. This tree is for people who like to finish their work quickly. With these skills, you can find damaged parts faster. Just hover your mouse over the buttons And you'll get more information about the skills from the pop-ups, but I can't because I'm still looking at this screen. So I have to remember to do that later. So each talent costs 1 skill point. To get them, you must do one thing, play. Every time you achieve next rank, you will get 1 skill point. Some skills have more than 1 level. To get the best skills, you should focus on 1 tree and try to max it out. You can, of course, mix skills from all 3 trees. The decision's yours. Okay. I might remember that. If you want to buy a skill, you have to hold the left mouse button on it. If you want to reset your skill points, hold the left mouse button on the fingerprint and reset skills. Okay. But remember that cost of resetting is not constant. It grows each time you reset. So cost is 1R, whatever that means. Okay. Now I can see them. Recycling. These are skills that I can learn. Training. So it's kind of interesting that they do this, because if you were doing a training sim in real life, and it was someone that's a super newbie to whatever, this could like give them an idea of what career path they want to take. You know, use it at like loose inspiration for helping someone determine a career path. Like what would I need to learn to, if I wanted to go down this career path? Could kind of be, yeah, I would say investigate that. I don't like loosely, but that's just an initial thought that could be something. Help them determine a career path. What do they need to learn to follow that career path? That's actually, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Because that is something that a lot of people that are new to a career, they get so overwhelmed and they think they have to learn everything, and they don't know where to start, and then they just get analysis paralysis or what decision paralysis or whatever. Giving them, okay, if you want to go down this path, you need to learn these skills. If you want to go down this path, you need to learn these skills. It's a nice thing for them. And give them a step-by-step way of doing that. It's actually pretty nice, because then that way, that structure is what helps them get past that paralysis and into the actual doing of the learning. So that's actually a pretty beneficial thing. I like that. I'm going to mark that. That would be a bud, I think, or like a thought for translating this to XR thing. I don't know. I'd have to think about where to put that in the notes. It's like a good inspiration. But anyway, my quest is to fix this sojourner. So, prepare for work. Each rover is transported in a special metal container to prevent damage during the transport. Your first task in every order is to place this container on the lift. They unpack automatically. Okay, so I guess I have to go to that thing because that diamond is above it. And again, it would be more clear if the thing was glowing instead of having a diamond there, because that is not enough noticeable contrast, especially when you're dealing with XR. Click on it. Now I have control. Overhead crane controller. Welcome to the main control unit. Confirm your identity by scanning your fingerprint. Linux. What am I doing? Crane? Wait. What am I doing? Where's the crane? Where's the rover? Which rover? Okay. Is that it? Okay. Now what? Grabber. Shift. Wait. Shift W or S? Can be attached. How do you attach it? F. Okay. Shift W is raise. And I have to, so I like that they have it glowing, but shift lower. There's not enough contrast. And be detached. Okay. That can move. Okay. Now. I just hit escape, I'm guessing. Now what? Exit? Okay. Now. Objectives. So I kind of wish that objectives was before missing parts. Because that's what I'm going to be referencing more. Is objectives, right? Repair the rover. This is going to be easy. Find out what causes the problem. They always say it's going to be easy. They always say that. Okay, what do I do? When you click on a vehicle on the lift, you enter the repairing view. During the repairs, I just clicked on it when it started glowing. So during the repairs, you will be using 3 different modes: assembly mode, disassembly mode, and Linux mode. You can switch between them by clicking 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Again, I'm going to have to remember. So note, hopefully they have some kind of tooltips around so that I can see it. So note that you do not have to be in the repairing view to do that. If you want to exit repairing view, press escape. Disassembly mode. In the disassembly mode, you can remove parts from rovers. The removed parts go directly into the warehouse. Access it through the warehouse tab in your tablet. In the assembly mode, you can attach the parts that you have in your warehouse to rovers you repair. And the lacking parts appear as slightly transparent. In the analysis mode, you can analyze parts and decide which parts might need replacement. I'm going to do the analysis mode, probably. The analyzed parts are different color than not analyzed. White is not analyzed. Ugh. Okay, now I have to remember a bunch of colors. Hopefully they have a legend there for me to remember what they all mean. Look from the screenshot up here, it doesn't look like they do. And again, we're using colors as our primary source of information, which is a problem for people with color blindness, especially if the color contrast is not enough to differentiate between the colors. Perfectly fine condition is green. Yellow is acceptable condition, and red requires immediate replacement. So when a part is dirty, you can't analyze it. In that situation, you have to remove it and clean it first. So I'm guessing you just figure out whether or not you can analyze something by whether or not something's dirty by whether or not you can analyze it if you have color blindness. You can always make sure you're in the right mode by simply looking at the icon above. Where's that icon going to be? Is that in the top left? With this knowledge, you can easily find the damaged wheel. Really? 3 is analysis mode. I'm going off memory. I need to analyze the wheels. I have to right click to analyze. That one's fine. Wheel's fine. That's fine. Easy. At least I'm right clicking to see. Oop, that's dirty. Wait, no, it's not dirty. Yellow is accessible. It's okay. So there is a little. Okay, we've got health indicators here. Wheel plug on that one is lower quality, so we might need to want to replace it. Same there. That's fine. That's questionable. Questionable. They might need to be replaced soon in that case. Can I, how do I move? Oh, can I right click or no? Switch. Can I check the switch? No, I want to check the switch because it's white. Okay, did I check? Wait, what did that do? Okay. Is that, oh. I'm right clicking versus left clicking, and when I left click on something, it moves, and I don't like it. I want to move it myself, and I want to move it myself because come from a 3D. I mean, I don't come from 3D. I'm used to using 3D tools, and in 3D tools, you would click. There would be a mode that you could go into to manually move the camera around. This one doesn't have that. I have to use the WASD keys. So part of the problem here that I'm having too is that there are some parts on here. So it's color coding what different things mean versus something just happened to music. Did my music just crash? Something just crashed. What just crashed? Something crashed. OBS still good? I've been having a lot of trouble with the internet browser. I use Chrome. That it keeps crashing lately. It's been really annoying. All right. Hopefully everything's still working. I don't see anything else causing a problem. But so I was saying that they've color coded what different things mean here. So then, however, some of the parts that they have are also white, like this little thing here. But so now I'm getting confused by potentially concerned that I'm going to be missing some parts because like the switch is white. But I can't analyze the switch. But guess what? In robotics, it could be the switch that's the problem. But I can't analyze it to see if it's the problem. So that's the wheel with the problem. But why is this blurry? because of all these little tiny parts. I'm having a hard time. This would definitely be a problem in VR. Unless you could, like, zoom in. But you'd have to be careful how you handle that in VR. Because of motion sickness and so forth. But, like, I'm having trouble clicking on some of the parts, but then some of the parts designed on here are actually white, like the switch and the wires. And the table's in the way, so I can't look at that. Like these parts are white. So, but you should, in real life, you would be able to analyze these things to see, is there a problem with these things? When we have parts on the back. So, yeah, this isn't an easy one, but there's a potential here for missing something really important in a real life situation, and this is so blurry. You would absolutely have to think of a different way of interacting with this for VR, because that is too small of a touch point in VR. So maybe though, this rover is actually bigger in real life than I think. So then maybe it's not as big of a deal in VR. But you have to be able to reach all the different parts somehow to analyze them. So then what would the solution be for that? I'm going to thoroughly analyze the whole thing. I'm not just going to, oh, there's the wheel. That's the problem. Because that in real life would be irresponsible. So there could be another problem that we could fix before it's too late. That we were missing. Okay, but I mean, in this tutorial, it's obviously the wheel. So then how do I replace the wheel? And this makes me want to go build another robot. The switches could also be something that go bad, but I can't analyze the switch. Maybe that's just in tutorial mode. But all of these things, the wires, everything, the connections, the wire connections, all of those things could be an issue in real life. The antenna? Ah, okay, so I could do the antenna. But I can't check these other things. Well, I checked something there, but I don't know what it was. Back of that. So anyway, this thing needs to be immediately replaced because that's the problem. So now what? I go into disassemble mode? Remove, wait. So for repair it, that's, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I want... Why did you do that? I just hit escape. It removed me from whatever mode. So I want to take the wheel off so I can fix the wheel. Disassembly mode. Okay. It was red before. Now it's not. Hold to remove. Also, don't auto zoom in and out Don't auto pan, don't auto zoom into XR. Don't do that. That is a major cause of motion sickness when they don't have control over the movement of the camera. So don't do that. I'm just holding down the right mouse button to do that. And yeah, I mean, this would be really cool in VR, but there's definitely some things that you would have to change for VR. Or even in mixed reality, actually. So now when you have the damaged part, you have to print a new one. We have just unlocked the 3D printer for you. When the printing is done, just attach the new wheel along with the rest of the missing parts you've taken off. Don't forget to take the new wheel from the printer feeder. Okay. How do I get out of this mode? Okay, and the printer is over here. So I have to select the category. I want a wheel. And now what? I just want a wheel. Oh, it's already doing it. Oh. I didn't know it started. I didn't know it had started printing. That wasn't clear at all. That's a thorn. I'm gonna write down. Wasn't clear. Printing had started. A wheel. If I had, could have accidentally printed too many parts. Because I didn't have enough resources, fortunately, it didn't do it. So that goes back to clarity, signs and feedback. What are your signs and feedback? Don't just rely on one source of feedback. I very, very barely heard the printer activate. That shouldn't be the only feedback. How do I get it? Okay. What was that thing? Was that the thing? Was that the wheel? Because that didn't look like a wheel. Maybe it was. Maybe it was just rubber. Okay. What was assembly mode was 2. Okay. So now put the wheel on. Hold to assemble the good wheel. And then I have to put all the screws back in. And you see how, you know, in real life, if you've ever assembled anything in real life, it can be cumbersome to screw stuff in, but they are simplifying the process here. I'm not having to align the screws to the little hole. It's automatically doing all that for me. It's simplifying the process and letting me just focus on the thing that I'm supposed to be learning. So right now I'm not supposed to be learning how to screw something in. I'm learning how to repair the rover. And what is the most important part of learning how to repair the rover is, so what it didn't teach me was what was actually wrong with the wheel. Because that would have kind of been important to know what was actually wrong with the wheel. Actually, I should probably note that. It didn't say what was wrong with the wheel. Didn't teach that. Because if you're a repair person, it's kind of something you want to know. So, kind of something to think about. Remember what it is you're teaching. So if they already had been taught about the actual what's wrong with the wheel, then great. Then okay. So maybe we're assuming, if we use apologetics, we're assuming, okay, yeah, they already knew that. That was a different class. This class is on actual assembly and disassembly. Okay, good. And resource gathering and stuff. Okay, fine. Just remember what's the goal. So I finished adding that. Okay, and then the REC connector. The last thing to do is reset the ECU. To do that, you have to use the ECU configurator you've seen before. And I don't remember where that is. That device connects the rovers via a special connector that you have to plug in first. Some important things you need to know. You can plug in the connector only if no parts of the rover are missing, otherwise you'll not see it. So apparently I did it right. You can't disassemble the rover while the connector is in the rover, so always do it at the very end. I don't remember removing the thingy. They didn't teach me that. So that would have been an important thing to teach in the beginning. First things first, remove the thingy. You can't disassemble the rover while the connector is in the rover, so always do it at the very end. Do what at the very end? You have that device connects the rover via a special connector that you had to plug in. So there wasn't a connector in there at the beginning. Okay. So you wait until the end to reset the thing. You have to reset it. Why do you have to reset it? Why do you have to reset it? Because if I were learning repair, I would want to know why I have to reset it. It's not about just blindly learning what to do. You also need to learn why. Include why. When you're teaching, quality teaching includes why. Resetting REC connector. Of resetting the ECU. Why? If I were repairing, if I were becoming this as a career, I would, yeah, this is just a game, but we're talking about training sims here, actual training sims. So in that case, why? Why do I need to reset the ECU? I'm going to keep this game and I'm going to keep playing it. I'm probably going to add it to my wish list to buy, but, because I'm a nerd and I want to learn this. But yeah, if it's we're an actual training sim, real job, you would want to make a lot of improvements to it. So you can't disassemble the rover while the connector's on the rover, so always do it at the end. And if you configure the drivers and disconnect the connector, then drivers will restart again and you'll have to start again. Wait, so that device connects to Rover. Does this? So if I configure the drivers and disconnect the connector, then the drivers will restart again and I'll have to start again. So does it stay on? How do you make it stop resetting? So in order to stick the connector to the rover, exit, it doesn't tell me that. Okay, exit the repairing view and press 2 for assembly mode. If everything is fine, you should be able to stick it in without any problems. They have some typos. To disconnect the connector, press 1 for the disassembly mode. Remember, you have to be out of repairing view. Why? This doesn't... So this is one of the ways that the interactions are getting in the way of the thing that you're learning. Because now I'm having to worry about whether I'm in disassembly mode versus assembly mode versus... you don't want to do that in an actual training sim, because that's unnecessarily cognitive load that's getting in the way of learning the thing that you're supposed to be learning. Because now I'm more concerned about being in the right mode than I am about the thing that I'm supposed to be learning. See, I'm figuring out how to write have to. The assembly versus disassembly. Worried about which mode instead of thing and learning. Yeah. So that's a really good example of workload and how you in VR you don't have to have these different modes. There are other ways of doing that. You don't have to have a mode to go into. That's not necessary. So you want to design it as real as possible, as real life as possible, while still like doing the things that are unnecessary, because you're not learning how to screw in a screw. So fine, you can automate that part. What you're learning is how to disassemble and reassemble and repair these things and the process for that and so forth. But in that process, you also want to know the whys so that you don't make those mistakes. Not just learning what mistakes not to make, you're also having to learn why, because that helps you process better, more effectively. Okay, so in order to stick the connector into the rover, exit the repairing view and press 2 for assembly mode. If everything is fine, I'm just frustrated because I'm probably going to have to remember all this and I'm going to forget. So if everything is fine, you should be able to stick it in without any problems. To disconnect the connector, press run. Okay, I think I know what I'm supposed to do, maybe. I have to go into assembly mode. Am I in assembly mode? Okay, that worked. And now I have to go to the east. Where is this thing? Wait, I have to... Where am I going? Where am I going? How do I do that? Okay. Let me see. Restart the drivers. How do I restart the drivers? I'm sure it told me in that little tutorial thing, but since it's not in context, it was something that I saw before. Is this it? Driver configuration. On this screen, you can reset the rover system. Your task is to create a path from the battery to the output. When you click at a blank tile, the inventory panel on the left will display all the available pieces. for that place, then just click on the block in the inventory panel and it would be placed automatically. Red and green, and again, they're using red and green as your primary information source, which is not good, because if you have color blindness, then you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Don't use color only as your primary input source. They could accompany it with a symbol, just like you're doing with this battery here. Accompany it with a symbol. There are symbols for drained batteries versus full batteries, and that we are already knowledgeable of. And wait, what time is it? Okay, I'm gonna have to stop soon. When you click add a blank tile, the inventory panel on the left will display all the available pieces for that place. Then just click on the block. I think we're gonna have to stop here because I have a meeting that I have to do in less than an hour, so let's stop here and do the rose thorn bud. This, I'm going to see that I'm going to get frustrated with because I'm not learning. It's going to expect me to remember these instructions. Red and green spots are supposed to be filled with special tiles that either add or subtract voltage. To safely reset the system, you have to reach the target voltage as shown in the top right corner of the screen. What is the actual voltage? This is a how do you this a select, delete, rotate, rotate. And this is like assuming that what am I doing here? Yeah, see, this isn't even like clear what I'm supposed to be doing here. I need... Do you delete? Okay, fine. I need this to be routed to this with green. So I can't touch that. I can't touch that. How do you... Yeah, I don't even understand what I'm supposed to do here. You can... How do you, like... Because I... Okay, so I can't... But I can't... I can't undo that. How do I don't know what I just did to undo that. So yeah, this is where it's not so clear. And I do have a meeting that I have to do in less than an hour, so we're gonna have to stop here. But yeah, so that's where the problems begin. It's not teaching you enough about that thing, because I don't know enough about voltage. And yeah, I could probably figure out if I had the time, but I don't. So not gonna happen this time, but let's go ahead and start our rose thorn bud so we can get through that. Okay. Now, some of the roses. What were some of the things I like? And this is, again, this is where it would be beneficial for you to watch live so that you can participate. You can still participate asynchronously through the YouTube comments, and I do check those comments, but doing it live with me and taking notes as I'm doing it in the chat would actually give you practical experience working with a team to analyze an experience. So I highly encourage you to participate in those streams so that you can get this practical work experience that you can put on your resume as experience. You would just say it's a side project, and that shows your passion, that you're doing something on the side unpaid. And employers care about that. So what went well? What was the highlight? What did you like? What did I like? I liked the there was that thing that I liked about the skill paths, the skill learning paths. That you could pick. Can pick skill learning paths, and I liked that there were audio settings, adjustable audio control settings, and I like the well, so the I don't have to say I like because that's unknown because it's yellow rose. Because it's a rose. The assembly wasn't cumbersome. The assembly disassembly not cumbersome. Of the screws and stuff. Not cumbersome. Is that so like it automatic animation for those parts? Because that's not the focus again. Focus is not how to screw in a screw. So good that it's animated. Auto animated. And I also liked here. I need to mark that. I also liked that the gonna have to do a short one today. There are a lot of thorns. Linux on the moon. On Mars, sorry. On Mars. We're on Mars. So I'm running out of time here because I do need to eat first. So I'm gonna go ahead and so we would continue because we want to think about the good things because we want to remind ourselves of what is working, how to do a good experience, what is working. So yeah, they did have like so the checklist, the objective list, easily accessible, and the wayfinding to different areas were during steps. Wayfinding is provided, but then there was also is provided during the tutorial, but there is a thorn with that, and now we're gonna get into the thorns because I've got to speed up. And there's another train that you can hear. That's one of my personal life thorns is that train. So Where was that? Doesn't teach. I'm looking at my notes. Doesn't teach what's wrong with the wheel. Fortunately, didn't have enough. Assuming I remember preliminary diamonds, not enough. Yeah, diamonds, not enough contrast against the background. Diamonds, not enough contrast against background. So, okay, that one's done in the workshop. And there was also diamonds everywhere instead of step. Okay, so diamonds everywhere, adding to if everywhere can be overwhelming. Everywhere at once can be overwhelming during training. And then the bud for that would be make it focused and step by step. Now those are tied together. That's why I put them physically together, because those are specifically tied together. And so you can't, so during the tutorial can't practice while reading tutorial panel. You have to exit out. Have to remember to exit and remember. That's not cool. That's not ideal. It's information overload. Okay, and then you can't practice while learning the information architecture. I'm glad I took notes. This is why we take notes. The IA in tutorial says tasks, when menu, when actual tab says objectives. And that bud would be to make sure IA still and tutorials are consistent. Make sure tutorials are consistent, are updated when any change is made to the game. Or training sim or anything. And that's just a process thing. And there are ways of doing that as well with your information management that we don't have time to talk about today. And it is assuming tutorial, assuming I remember what I learned instead of just reminding me. An example of that was what's in the preliminary analysis tab. For example. And when I was trying to find that ECU, whatever unit, whatever it was called, that said, you learned where it was before, now remember, because I learned a lot of things. I don't remember which one was that. Now I have to go figure that out. Just tell them. Not. Well, okay. So development-wise, maybe it is hard, but concept-wise, it's simple. So not letting me initiate pop-ups panels when approaching new area to learn. Just remind them. That's the bud. Just remind them in context. Or actually let them let players, students, whatever, access thing they're learning while reading tutorial panel as reference. So that goes there. And this also goes there. Because if they can access it, here, I'll rearrange these so that that one goes together, because that bud goes with that one as well. That one can fix both of those problems. And then not letting me initiate pop-up panels when approaching a new area. Give player control over all the steps. Okay, and then so the colors, I already did that. Looking at my notes, the red and green colors, yeah, the color here. Colors used as sole source of information, of important information. Not, e.g. the red and green diamonds in the checklist. And e.g. the status of different parts or condition. But, so there was one thing that they were doing that was good on that, though, was that hovering over a part gives information on condition. That's good. So that was a good thing. But the colors are being used as the sole source of information. So that's not the sole source of information, but it is when you're looking at it, because it's really hard to... You would have to hover over the part to get the information, which is still going to be a problem because you'd be playing memory. So let me do this. Would have to play memory, so it's a game from a, I don't know if they have it in other, it's an old game, to remember status of different parts. Without hovering over it. That would be very, very cumbersome. Unnecessarily so. Okay, and so use enough contrast for distinction for color blindness. Accompany colors with symbols or labels or both. And on that one, on the checklist, just use check boxes instead of diamonds on this one. Okay, and what were some other things? So gotta go. Wasn't clear that printing had started. Yeah. Not clear. Printing had started. What? Not clear when printing starts. Let's make it current state. Not clear when printing begins. 3D printing. Based on interaction in the panel. Interaction in panel that I'm working on. Almost accidentally printed 2 wheels instead of 1. Didn't have enough parts to print 2. Not enough parts print 2. That resources, whatever. Not enough resources. Okay. And so give clear feedback in panel. That is a basic UX pillar of UX. Wasn't clear when it had started. Could have accidentally printed too many for familiar to have enough resources. Didn't teach what was wrong with the wheel. So it doesn't teach what's wrong with wheel, only that needs replacement. So if learning IRL, need to know the why. Okay. And let's see. Unless that's a different module. But I would say still remind them why. Still good to remind why. That's reinforcing learning. Doesn't include why of resetting ECU. Doesn't teach why need to reset ECU after repair. So that is the same for that one. You need to know why. And doesn't include why. That's done. The assembly, disassembly. Okay. Yeah, that's another one. Have to switch to assembly, different modes for assembly, repair, etc. And that is cumbersome and distracts from what supposed to be learning. Supposed to learn. Explore other ways to enable repair, etc., without having to go into different modes. Okay. That is all of the Rose Thorns butts. Looks like I wrote down that I have time to do because I do need to eat something real quick before my meeting. So let's talk about translating this into XR. And I did, so understand the UX best practices for training in XR. That is first and foremost. Motion sickness step-by-step tutorials are necessary in XR since it's new to most people. Since it's new tech. So it's necessary. Step by step. And I talked about a lot of these translating to XR, what was important, what was not important. And I'm sorry we don't have time to actually go in depth on that anymore. But so there was also a lot of auto camera panning instead of letting player control it. That is a high risk of motion sickness in XR. So allow more control camera. In XR, that is vital. Motion sickness, giving player control over movement and camera is vital in XR to reduce the risk motion sickness. That is one of the biggest things that is an issue with motion sickness. So one of the good things about this tutorial, though, that I didn't... This is a good thing, is I was able to go at my own pace. For the whole thing. I was able to go at my own pace. So I had control over that, which is very good. Keep that. It's a thing to keep. Because that was a problem that I've had with other tutorials and VRs, that it doesn't let you go at your own pace. Just throwing out information at you without any kind of control over it. It's too much overload. It's not effective, especially if you've got distractions going on in the real world. So again, I apologize that I have to stop this quickly, that we're not really spending a whole lot of time on translating to XR, but you can go back. I did talk about a lot of the whys during this, so I encourage you to go back and watch the recording. And thanks for watching, and I will not see you next week because I've been summoned for jury duty, so I will not be streaming next week, but the week after this we will continue our study of training simulations. I think the next game I have is Car Mechanic Simulator or something like that. So I think that's the next one. So I will see you then. Thanks for watching.